This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neil Kieran.
Welcome to Analysis in Chains. I'm Nathan Williams. Joining me today is Dennis Lewis. Dennis is the founder of ICO Success, a blockchain marketing firm, and he's just written a book called Behold the Cryptopreneurs. Thank you for joining me today, Dennis.
Hey, Nathan, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's really exciting for me.
When did you get into blockchain at the beginning? How did you first come across this amazing new technology?
Well, that's a great question. It's been, I guess, about 3 years now. A friend of mine contacted me. She was starting a blockchain company, and she knew that our marketing company did good work, and we kind of jumped in, and that was the first ICO we did with absolutely no experience really in the sector. And from there, it's just been, we kind of rode the waves and got wet and got dried off again and got wet again, and just have been at it ever since.
So that would have been 2016, right before the crash of the big crypto wave. You must have seen some interesting projects in your time.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few. Yeah, I think we've raised about $40 million for different projects since then, and I've seen a lot, man. I have seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and the terrible.
So was this the inspiration for your book?
Yeah, Nathan, the book is inspired by, a very human emotion. It's called frustration. I have
heard of frustration before.
Yeah. After seeing so many projects, so many scams, so many just things that give you a bad taste in your mouth, I really feel like our industry needs to turn itself around and get on a different track. It's just, I think we could do this a lot better than we are. And that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted to have my, 2 bits worth of how we could do this better.
So what are you frustrated about with the blockchain community or the blockchain projects you've seen?
Well, I guess there's a couple of things, but, I think the absolutely worst thing is that somehow we've let it all become about the token price. And it's all about speculation. It's all about making a quick profit. It's all about, either that or we stare at our belly buttons and talk about strange things like sharding and stuff like that, and we're forgetting there's a whole big wide world out there that could really be transformed with this technology. And, nobody's doing it. I'm sick of seeing projects that don't deliver, and it's just kind of frustrating.
What have been some of the projects you've been most frustrated or disappointed with, or the ones that you felt most let down by?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I mean,
a little bit provocative, maybe.
Maybe a little bit provocative. What I would say is,
don't say mine, Spider.
Provocative. No, I won't say yours. Let's go for the big ones. Let's say Ethereum, man. I mean, where is the promise? Where is the delivery? It's obviously the second biggest coin on the market now, but where are all these revolutionary companies that were going to be, building amazing solutions, and they all ended up being, can I get my token listed and raise $1 billion and go live on a beach?
It's been interesting seeing sort of the progression of the industry, because so many of these companies started out with people who had really high aspirations. But once you've raised the $100 million, the $50 million, you have a lot of people bearing down on you going, when Binance, when am I get listed? When do I get my Lambo? And I guess you feel a lot of pressure to deliver that. I wonder if that contributes to this push away from the ideals of the project that they had to begin with, or if those ideals were maybe never there.
Well, in the book, I talk about exactly that, about the almost the worst thing that you can do is to take a 22-year-old and give him $20 million. that it's just a terrible idea. These people, and I've seen this from the inside. A lot of the founders, they don't know how to run a business. They don't know how to build something sustainable. They're tech geeks and they're smart, but they're not. They don't have this There's a chapter in the book called we need the crypto geezers. We need some old men like me that have been around the block a few times and that know the importance of just basics that are so often missing. And I go through a lot of that we need to be solving real problems in the real world. And, we don't necessarily need to be building, technology just for technology. And we don't need to be, just chasing after, this quick run on the exchange. And,
I completely agree with you. I think they should give the money to the 40-year-olds. Not that I'm biased, but I'm 40. That's why.
Well, I'm gonna say the 50-year-olds.
That's the joke.
I'm 50. That's why the joke was it.
Fair. But it's interesting. I was talking about this with a friend just the other day. How so many of these projects have raised immense amounts of money. And some of them have actually really good white papers, really good plans, really good prospects. But yet, where is the deliverable? I don't want to ruffle the boat too much, but I mean, you look at Polkadot, how much money did they raise? Look at Lisk, how much money did they raise? And where are the use cases that should have been built on that? That's a lot of money.
Exactly. And there's some things that people, I think they just don't realize. I've seen part infighting. How many projects have died because after they've raised the money, they've gone at each other's throats inside the projects until it was all gone.
I was speaking just a couple of days ago with an old friend in the industry, someone I interviewed on the show maybe about a year and a half ago. And it was just interesting to hear his take on it because we were talking about this very phenomenon. And he said, I doubt that the projects that raised, $10 million, $20 million during the ICO hype really raised as much as they said they did. Because if you think about it, the low end of projects back in those days raised $10 million. And $10 million is enough to have a team of 20 people for about 4 years. But these companies have disappeared. It's either that they ran off with the money, or maybe they didn't ever raise the money they claimed to raise. But either way, it's a big disappointment.
Well, I go back to the basics. I talk about, there are things that aren't very sexy, but they're really important. Like having a bookkeeper. I've personally witnessed, I'd bet I've witnessed 8 projects that have had serious problems just because they couldn't keep track of their money. And it's not a trivial question when you're doing crypto and you've got lots of currencies and lots of decimal points and it's so easy and lots of wallet addresses and here and there and we should do this and we should do that, and then we get an argument between the founders and then things just start getting complicated and you'd be surprised at how many decent projects that probably didn't start off with the idea of not delivering, don't deliver because they basically just don't know how to. They don't know how to build that team of 20 people and keep them going for 4 years to deliver a project.
So we've been grumping a little bit like the old men we are, but here's a question. What is the solution to this? What is the gleaming light that will bring us to the blockchain-enabled future, in your view?
Great question. Well, one of the things, and this is an idea that we go into in the book as well, is that we need to align the interests of the founders of the projects with the people that are investing or buying tokens. I'm careful about the word investing, but the deal is that they need to go hand in hand. And you don't need to raise $50 million upfront to build a successful business. And so we created a concept called a distributed ICO. And it's a smart contract based method that allows a project to raise money as they go along and as they deliver on what they promise. And it goes quarter by quarter. And it alleviates the headache for founders that they don't have to raise all that money up front, because you don't need it all up front. To be honest, most projects could get off the ground perfectly well with $500,000 and then raise some more a little bit farther down the road. But
not if you want your Lambo.
Yeah, that's the big deal there. This is a model that the scammers hate. But I really think it's a powerful idea that by forcing the founders to not only plan their projects better, but communicate better with the people that are giving them the funds, because they know that that's the way that they're going to keep getting funds in the future, that it really kind of makes them learn how to build a sustainable business. And that's how we start taking the industry towards actually transforming society. Because that's the real cool thing, is can we attack big problems like inequality and unbanked and so many different real world problems that affect real people all around the world, using this technology instead of just trying to get your Lambo like so many are trying to do.
I mean, the problem you're describing has been a problem since the dawn of time, right? It's the agency problem. It's the problem that the interests of the people running the company or the organization, or in this case, the protocol, aren't aligned with the people who have invested or who have given the money. And the question is, how do you change the incentives? And it's always been this way. Up until now, in big corporations, you give C-level executives stock options in order to try and align their interests with the interests of the investors. And then you also have fiduciary duty to try and sort of bind them to making sure the company is good in the long run instead of just selling off the assets in the short run and taking a golden parachute. And so, I don't see this as a new problem, but what I do see with this is a lot of inexperienced founders having this agency problem with a lot of inexperienced, quote unquote, investors, people who are buying into the token sales, expecting a big return. Now, I'm not the type of person who completely dismisses the idea of the retail investor. I think that it's actually really good that individual people with €1,000 or $1,000 can get into a startup, as opposed to being blocked out of it for fear that grandma and granddad will lose their pension. I think that there's maybe a middle ground, but what I don't know is there an unintended consequence of having a milestone-based system that you would put responsible founders at the mercy of perhaps a mob mentality, more so than what we have today?
Well, the way we and if you read about it, the way we structured the idea of the smart contract for the distributed ICO, basically it's just at the end of each quarter, the token holders get to vote on only one question, and that question is, should the project continue? And to vote no should be pretty much not in everybody's best interest, because you've already put money in probably the quarter before. So you don't want to vote no unless you're convinced that there's no future. But by doing that and making these checkpoints along the way, you're giving you're giving a structure to something that makes them focus on what they really need to focus on, which is building the solution. It's solving the problem. And, founders shouldn't have to be fundraising continuously. It's like politicians now. They're always running for office, right? And, 24/7, every day of the year, the day after the elections. You need to have a certain amount of stability in the project, but you don't need to have the marketing budget for 5 years from now in your pocket right now. That doesn't even make good business sense.
No, I guess that makes sense. So have you seen any projects adopt this method of doing an ICO that is distributed over time?
Well, I just got the book out, so I think we got to give it a little bit more time. But definitely, anybody interested in visiting our website at Cryptopreneurs.club.
Get with the program. We got to get this going. Come on, Dennis. It's been what?
That's right.
20 minutes. Where's the
20
solutions?
minutes, and we haven't solved the damn universe yet. The answer is 42. But
come on, when Lambo, when moves. So tell me, where did this idea come from? This idea of the distributed ICO, was it just out of the failures, or did you see people doing the right thing that sort of inspired you to record it?
Well, I'm sorry to say that it's mostly just because of all of the problems I've seen, with my own two eyes, and that and the fact that I'll give you I'll tell you a story. And this is a real story that happened to me probably 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I was visiting the headquarters of a very big multinational in the American company, and I was visiting their headquarters in a European country. Let's say it was Portugal. It wasn't exactly Portugal, but anyway, let's say it was Portugal. And I was visiting their headquarters, and I had a meeting with a guy, and I went to the office. I got there. I got to the building, maybe 10 minutes early, and was waiting in the hall. There was 3 security guards in the hall, waiting there. It was just a huge hall, empty. The guy comes down finally. We go up. We take the elevator to the 14th floor, and his office. He was there, and there was this whole floor of this building. Just a huge office skyscraper building, and there was room for 200 people on this floor, and it was basically him and one other guy that had offices there, and the rest was just empty desks. And we had our conversation, we had our meeting, and I couldn't resist. I had to say, but does this kind of seem weird to you? I mean, isn't this kind of empty? And this is a big company, and he said, well, we only have these 2 floors of the building, and we'll probably grow into it. And And I said, but don't you realize that this costs lots of money? And he said, yeah, but back at the headquarters, when you look at the spreadsheet, our office is so much cheaper than the one in Paris that they never even bothered to look.
Huh.
And that and that's a real story that happened to me. And I think that was the first time I realized the idea of aligning the interests of the investors and the people that are actually in the project. This guy couldn't care less. He got paid every month. He had it didn't bother him that it was him and one other guy that had the whole floor of an office building just for themselves. They could have played soccer in there with no problem at all. And that idea, when you start looking at projects and you start meeting with people and you say, but I understand you've got good intentions, but do things sensibly. You don't need, and you don't need all that money up front. And you can see in the real world how actually raising that money too early is a problem. It actually is bad for the project, because then they have to learn how to manage money. They have to learn they start investing in other projects because, we've got all this token. What do we do? Do they learn to be traders? Do they learn to hedge correctly? How much do they convert into fiat, and how much do they leave? And then the market crashes, and all of these added problems just distract from actually doing what the project needs to be doing. And that's what I think, why we need cryptopreneurs who are actual, business people that actually think about the holistic idea of building a sustainable long-term venture.
About a year ago, or maybe about a year and a half ago, I interviewed a company called Bankera. And I remembered they stood out at the time because they were doing a multi-stage ICO. They did an ICO and they were planning a secondary ICO and a third and a fourth. after they had hit certain milestones. And the guy got very defensive when I asked him about that, because he always took flack for it back in the day, because the investors were interested in a limited number of tokens that would be set out at a fixed time, and as demand increased, the price would go up, and they were afraid that if they did a secondary or a third or a fourth fundraise, that would dilute the tokens that were in the market. And what this created is a very strong disincentive from the investors themselves to do what was in the best interest of the company health. And so I'm wondering if listening to the investors and their specific short-term needs is really in the best interest of what's going to make a project succeed.
Yeah, very right. There's a chapter in the book about the whales, isn't there? It's all, it's I've seen that too, and it's the big investors, the funds that come in, and they're only interested in, floating the token on the exchange, flipping it for 2x, 3x, 4x, and going on to the next one. And they couldn't really, all too often, they don't really care that much about what the project is actually trying to do. That's not the mentality I think that this industry needs. We need to find a better way to focus our energy, because otherwise we'll just end up being, fodder for the speculators and the whales and the manipulators, and it'll just be a blip in the history, and somebody will say, oh yeah, that was another tulip thing that happened in the early 21st century.
So last question. We're in 2019. We went through the crypto winter of 2018 and a half. Things picked up a little bit this year with Facebook announcing Libra, but it's still been a very difficult time for cryptocurrency in general. Is the ICO dead, in your opinion?
Oh, that is I was just talking to somebody the other day about it. I don't think it's dead, but I think it's can't be what it was before. And maybe that would probably be another 20-minute conversation here, and I'm happy to go as long as you want. But I don't think we're going to see the same Wild West ICO landscape that that those waves are gone. That's why I think we need a new paradigm. That's why I think we can do things better. And I think it's time that we start actually being grown-ups in the room, and we start delivering on our promises.
The book is called Behold the Cryptopreneurs, How to Thrive as a Cryptopreneur in the New Blockchain Economy Without Feeling Like a Used Car Salesman. The author is Dennis Lewis, who is the founder of ICO Success, the blockchain marketing firm. Dennis, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Nathan. And just to give it a little plug here, we have a site called cryptopreneurs.club. So anybody who's interested, they should go there. They can get the first 4 chapters for free there. And just sign up, and we'll send you the first 4 chapters, and then the book's on Amazon in Kindle version and physical books. So
perfect. Cryptopreneurs.club, and we'll have the link in the description. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. It's been a real fun time. Thank you.